Thank you for your backing on Patreon.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This is just going to be hopefully a quick video on driving hours, and on this video we're going to touch on domestic hours, and I'll do a separate video for EU. So as I've just mentioned, there are two types of hours, domestic and EU. One requires a tachograph card and one doesn't. Domestic hours is what, as a bus driver, you're more than likely to be running to, unless specified otherwise. Some companies do run their bus drivers on EU. But as I say, let's discuss domestic hours and the brief outlay of what they are and what their limitations are. Now, for this I've taken the information from the Directive website, which I'll put a link in the description below for it. So you obviously have two types. You can have goods vehicles, domestic hours, and PSV or PCV, whichever one you prefer. PSV is the public service vehicles or passenger carrying vehicles. So goods vehicles we won't touch on because you won't obviously be driving them. So the limits are in place of, they break it down into several parts. So duty time is the time of when you sign on to the time you finish, and this is anything to do with driving the vehicle, to walk into the vehicle, checking the vehicle, waiting for the breakdown truck. That is all your duty time. Your daily driving limit. Now this is something that a lot of people that aren't drivers seem to forget we have. We cannot drive for any more than 10 hours a day. That is 10 hours a day. Sounds a lot, but it's not. Because if you think about it, we do the 38 route, which is an hour and a bit. By the time you've gone up there, come back, gone from the depot, gone back to the depot, it's nearly 3.5 hours piece. So you can do that like twice, 3 times at a maximum. That's pushing it, because there's no excuse for breaking any of these rules. Brakes and continuous driving. Obviously you must have a brake, and you can't just drive for the 10 hours. So after 5.5 hours, which sounds an odd amount because then you can drive for 10, but 5.5 hours you must take a break of at least 30 minutes for rest and refreshments. Or within any period of 8 hours 30, you must take at least 45 minutes in breaks. You must also have a break of at least 30 minutes by the end of this period, unless it's the end of the working day. So what that is saying, you could take a 15 and then a 30, if I remember rightly, and then that'd be fine. So you can use the EU rules there to drive for 8 hours 30 minutes. Most bus companies, if I'm honest with you, aren't going to play that rule. They play by 5.5 hours, that's it. Length of the working day, which is otherwise known as spread over. This is obviously the time from you signing on to the time you sign off. You can only have a spread over of 16 hours in any one day. So that means you can say you can drive for 5 hours in the morning, have 5 hours in the middle playing with ticket machines or training or whatever, and then you can go do 5 more hours driving. That'll take you up to 15 hours. So you've got 1 hour left of your spread over. Again, very rarely happens in the bus industry. More than likely the 16-hour spread over is used as overtime for late running and bits and bobs like that. I have done long days as a bus driver, but as again, they don't really take up to 16 hours because you've got to have a daily rest period. Now this consists of 10 hours between your shifts. So from the time you finish to the time you start again, there must be a space of 10 hours before the first duty and immediately after the last duties in a working week. You must take a rest of 10 hours between 2 working days or spread overs. This can be reduced to 8.5 hours up to 3 times a week. So a lot of the time you'll get 11 hours. We tend to get 11 hours, 11, 12 hours. But obviously they can reduce this, and I think this week I've got a reduced one because I've only got 9 hours. So that classes as an 8.5 hour break between duties. So that's one of my weekly reductions. Again, you don't really, unless you go for the overtime, you won't tend to have a reduction, because they make sure you do get enough time off and on duty. And then every 2 weeks you must take a weekly rest of 24 hours. A week is defined from midnight to on Monday morning till 24 hours on Sunday. So in essence you can work for 13 days, and on your 14th one you must take a rest day. Then you can work for another 13 and take another rest day. Again, most companies don't work like that, but if you take overtime, I have done it. I've done many a times before I left originally, doing 13 days on, 1 day off, 13 days on, 1 day off, and it knackers you out. So why do they put these in place? It's just basically for safety, because they don't want tired drivers driving a 12-ton bus down the road. It's also to make sure of fair competition as well, stuff like that. But the main one is for the safety of the public. At the end of the day, you are driving a large vehicle and you should be responsible. You can't be driving tired, because if you fall asleep at the wheel of a bus, bad things are going to happen. You'll probably kill yourself and kill others with it, possibly. There aren't really any excuses for going over this. The other rules that come into play with the daily rest, the domestic hours, is the working time directive rules, which we'll touch on in the tachograph, which is the EU hours. But basically, working time directive, everybody that works runs the working time directive. So if you work in a shop, you'll work to working time directive rules, which is 6 hours, and then you must have a half-an-hour break. So that again can be, say you do 4 hours and then you can do 2 hours spare. The other thing is that driving time only counts when the wheels are turning. You'll find at many places how companies go around doing that, but certain companies do it different ways. Like at one point, Stagecoach worked off what platform time was. So when I used to do all-nighters, although the driving time wasn't over 10 hours, but the platform time was, they wouldn't accept it because there's a chance I could drive for more than 10 hours. Even though we all knew realistically it wouldn't happen, but because there was the platform time, because then for the bus industry it gets confusing, because you have your driving time, your duty length, your paid duty, paid break, and platform. Platform time is basically the time that you spend on the bus, not walking to it, not checking it, on the bus. And at one point our Stagecoach was like, no, you've got 11 hours platform time, you can't do it. But that's not covered in the rules. It is basically driving rules that are covered. So that is basically the domestic hours. They are very simple, domestic hours. EU hours is just ridiculously confusing, and I say confusing, if you do them simply they're very easy, but these are the domestic ones, which are even easier. So to sum up, you can drive for 10 hours a day, you must take a break after 5.5 hours, but you cannot exceed 10 hours for the day. So if you drive for 5.5 hours, you can only drive for 4.5 the next half. You only can work 16 hours in one day. You must take 10 hours off between shifts. This can be reduced to 8.5 hours up to 3 times a week. and every 2 weeks you must take one full 24-hour rest period. A typical week runs between 00 on Monday to 2400 hours on a Sunday, and that's basically it. Thank you for watching. If you've got any questions, please pop them below. We'll try and answer them the best you can. We'll obviously put a link to the Directive site to this page that I've worked off in the description. The only reason I've worked off these is to make sure I haven't missed anything. For EU hours it will be definitely to make sure I don't miss anything. But these are the British domestic rules. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.
There's nothing like it, you